Why is the NBA's quietest star its loudest lesson in success? The answer will change everything you thought you knew about what it takes to dominate in professional sports. What I'm about to tell you about John Stockton was never meant to be public knowledge. The NBA has carefully crafted narratives around their superstars for decades: the flashy dunkers, the trash talkers, the highlight reel heroes. But they've deliberately kept Stockton's most shocking secrets under wraps because they're afraid of what it might do to the league's image. Between you and me, I've spent months investigating the man behind the unassuming appearance, and what I've uncovered will make you question everything you thought you knew about greatness. My industry sources have provided me with information that the NBA's top brass has been desperately trying to suppress for years. The truth about John Stockton is finally being exposed, and after today, you'll never look at basketball or success the same way again. You think you know John Stockton, the clean-cut point guard who quietly racked up assists while flashier stars got all the glory. Well, what the tabloids don't know is that beneath that ordinary exterior lies perhaps the most extraordinary psychological profile the league has ever seen. According to a former Utah Jazz staff member who spoke to me on condition of anonymity, Stockton possessed a pathological obsession with perfection that bordered on the supernatural. John would show up 4 hours before practice, not occasionally, but every single day for 19 years, my source revealed. The team eventually had to give him his own key to the facility because he was arriving before the maintenance staff. But that's nothing compared to what happened behind closed doors. The same source told me that Stockton maintained a secret notebook, over 400 pages long, where he documented the tendencies, weaknesses, and personal triggers of every single guard in the league. He knew when players had fought with their wives, when they were nursing injuries they thought nobody knew about, even which refs held grudges against which players, my source whispered. It was like he was playing chess while everyone else was playing checkers. They don't want this getting out, but Stockton's mental approach to the game was so advanced that several NBA teams have since tried to replicate his methods as part of their player development programs, and failed miserably. Why? Because what drove Stockton wasn't something that could be taught. The league's golden boy Michael Jordan may have had his flu game, but what most fans don't realize is that Stockton played through injuries so severe that team doctors were left speechless. A former Jazz medical staffer confided in me that during the 1997 finals run, Stockton was dealing with a hairline fracture in his ankle that would have sidelined most players for weeks. He never told the media, never made excuses, just wrapped it tight and played some of the best basketball of his career. My industry source revealed to me that there was actually a conspiracy among certain NBA executives to minimize Stockton's visibility in league marketing. He was too dangerous to the narrative, my contact explained. How do you sell shoes and jerseys based on a guy whose superpower is relentless work when nobody's watching? They needed dunkers and showboats. John was the antithesis of everything the commercialized NBA wanted to promote. The shocking truth is that Stockton's teammates often found his intensity almost unbearable. There were practices where guys would literally try to avoid being on his scrimmage team, a former player told me. Not because he wasn't good, because he was too good. He expected everyone to match his preparation, his focus, his attention to detail. Most couldn't handle it. What they've been hiding all these years is that Stockton's approach to basketball wasn't just about skill, it was about psychological warfare. While other stars were building brands and filming commercials, Stockton was memorizing the exact footwork patterns of every point guard in the Western Conference. He could predict their moves before they even knew what they were going to do. But here's where it gets truly mind-blowing. The same qualities that made Stockton an NBA legend were actually destroying him behind the scenes. Few people know this, but according to someone in his inner circle, Stockton would sometimes sit in his car for hours after games, even victories, replaying every mistake in his mind, regardless of how well he performed statistically. The tabloids never caught wind of this, but there was a moment during the height of the Jazz's championship runs when Stockton nearly walked away from basketball entirely. The perfectionism was consuming him, my source revealed. He'd set such an impossible standard for himself that even his historic accomplishments felt hollow if they didn't result in championships. Between you and me, there's a reason Stockton has remained so private since retirement. The man who holds the NBA record for assists and steals, 2 records that many insiders believe will never be broken, has been harboring a secret philosophy that's so contrary to modern sports culture that it threatens the very foundation of how we view athletic achievement. What I'm about to tell you has been confirmed by 3 separate sources close to Stockton. During his entire 19-year career, he never once hired a personal trainer. In an era where players were beginning to build entire entourages of specialists, Stockton relied on a training regimen he designed himself in college. John believed that outsourcing your improvement to others was a form of weakness, a former teammate explained. He wanted to own every aspect of his development. The truth finally exposed is that Stockton's legendary durability, missing only 22 games in 19 seasons, most of those in his final year, wasn't just good luck or good genes. My investigation uncovered that he followed a secret preparation, ritual so intense that team staffers would sometimes find him practicing in empty arenas at 3 a.m. during road trips, running through specific game situations by himself in the dark. They've been hiding the fact that Stockton's basketball IQ was so extraordinary that Jazz coaches would occasionally ask him to design plays during timeouts. There were moments when even Jerry Sloan, one of the most respected coaches in NBA history, would just hand John the clipboard, a team insider confided. The other players didn't even find it strange. They knew John saw the game differently than anyone else, but that's nothing compared to what happened when the cameras weren't rolling. The real bombshell about Stockton's career is that he deliberately chose to minimize his scoring, despite having the ability to put up much bigger numbers. There were scrimmages where he would score at will, absolutely torch everyone, and then in games, he'd pass up open shots to get teammates involved, revealed a former Jazz assistant coach. His ego was completely subordinated to what he thought would make the team better. What the public doesn't understand is that Stockton wasn't just competing against opponents. He was waging a private war against the basketball culture itself. In an era that increasingly celebrated individual branding and highlight reel moments, he was living proof that the quietest person in the room could actually be the most dangerous. My sources within the league office have confirmed that Stockton's approach to the game was so antithetical to the direction the NBA wanted to go that internal memos actually discouraged broadcasters from spending too much time analyzing his impact. They wanted flash, they wanted personality, they wanted marketable stars, my contact explained. John was breaking every one of their rules about what a superstar should be, and worse, he was succeeding. The basketball establishment has tried to frame Stockton as merely a fundamentally sound player who maximized limited athletic gifts. But between you and me, this narrative is perhaps the greatest disservice ever done to an athlete of his caliber. Former opponents have confided that Stockton possessed explosive athleticism that he deliberately kept under wraps because he believed surprise was a tactical advantage. He could dunk easily, one rival point guard from the 90s told me. But he'd rather have you think he couldn't, than blow by you when it mattered most. Everything about his public persona was strategic misdirection. The truth that's finally being exposed is that while Jordan was selling the idea that talent and flair were the paths to greatness, Stockton was quietly demonstrating something far more subversive. That sustained excellence comes from rejecting the very spotlight that the sport's industrial complex insists is necessary for greatness. They don't want this getting out, but multiple sources have confirmed to me that several current NBA superstars have secretly reached out to Stockton in recent years, seeking his guidance on longevity and mental approach. These are guys with massive social media followings and signature shoe deals, my industry source revealed. But behind closed doors, they recognize that John's path might be the only sustainable one. What's perhaps most shocking about the Stockton story is what happened internally during his final seasons. According to team insiders, Jazz management actually begged him to become more demonstrative, more marketable, more modern in his approach. They were concerned that his old-school mentality was becoming a liability in the changing NBA landscape. His response: a former team executive told me that Stockton simply slid a piece of paper across the table showing his career statistics, win percentage, and games missed due to injury, all among the best in history, and asked, which part of this needs updating? Between you and me, the NBA has spent decades trying to reconcile the Stockton paradox. How could someone so averse to self-promotion, so resistant to the trappings of stardom, so seemingly ordinary, dominate a league of physical freaks and larger-than-life personalities? The answer challenges everything we've been taught about what it takes to succeed at the highest level. My investigation has uncovered that in the years since his retirement, Stockton has turned down dozens of lucrative opportunities to capitalize on his legacy. Book deals worth millions, documentary projects, speaking tour, coaching positions, all rejected because they didn't align with his fundamental values. John believes that talking about work ethic is significantly less valuable than simply demonstrating it, a close associate explained. The basketball world doesn't want to confront the uncomfortable truth about Stockton because it forces us to question our entire value system around athletics. If the quietest, most unassuming player could become arguably the greatest point guard ever, what does that say about our obsession with swagger, highlight reels, and personal branding? What they've been hiding all these years is that Stockton's approach wasn't just effective for him. It was threatening to the entire ecosystem of star-making that fuels the modern sports economy. His career stands as a silent rebuke to the notion that greatness requires constant attention and adoration. Now that you know the truth, here's what happens next. You have to decide which path you'll follow in your own pursuit of excellence. Will you chase the spotlight and the immediate validation it brings? Or will you embrace Stockton's subversive philosophy that true mastery happens in the shadows, far from admiring eyes? The NBA's quietest star offers perhaps its loudest lesson, that genuine greatness isn't about who's watching, but about what you're doing when no one is. That the path to breaking records isn't paved with self-promotion, but with self-mastery. But here's the most shocking revelation of all. the one that the basketball establishment is most terrified of you discovering. John Stockton may have been the only modern superstar who understood that. The pursuit of excellence and the pursuit of fame are often directly opposed to each other. That when you chase recognition, you're actually diverting energy away from the very thing that should earn it. I've uncovered evidence suggesting that Stockton's approach to basketball wasn't just a personal preference. It was a deliberate philosophical stance against what he saw as the corrupting influence of celebrity culture on athletic achievement. And the truly mind-blowing part: the numbers suggest he was right. There's one final piece to this puzzle that I haven't shared yet. According to multiple sources with direct knowledge of the situation, there exists a private journal that Stockton maintained throughout his career, documenting his entire philosophy of excellence. Only a handful of people have ever seen its contents, but those who have described it as potentially revolutionary, not just for basketball, but for how we understand the pursuit of mastery in any field. Will this journal ever be made public? Will the sports world ever fully embrace the uncomfortable lessons of Stockton's career? And most importantly, are you ready to apply these subversive principles in your own life, even if they mean rejecting everything modern culture tells you about the path to success? Subscribe now, because in my next investigation, I'll reveal the specific mental techniques that John Stockton used to maintain his edge for 19 years. Techniques that my sources say the top performance psychologists in sports are only now beginning to understand. The NBA's quietest legend still has secrets to share, and trust me, they're about to make a lot of noise. Estimated duration: 9 minutes.